Hello everyone, my name is Amber. Welcome to my channel, Amber Reads Romance. Today I am going to be going over my top reads from April. If you are new to my channel, I used to do a mid-month and end-of-the-month wrap-up, but I recently changed that to weekly wrap-ups. I tended to have super long videos when I would go over my mid-month and end-of-the-month, so I thought I'd try weekly, which I have been enjoying doing that lately because I'm able to gush or rant about each book if I want to. Sometimes there's still a longer video, but it's been a little bit better for me. So I thought it would be good still to kind of go over, because I used to go over my monthly stats in my end of the month wrap up. So I thought let's do some monthly wrap up videos still, where I'll go over my stats. I'm going to bring you my top 5 reads from the month. And then I do have a couple of like my worst rated books. This month was a great month. I had a couple 6 stars, some good 5 stars. So I only had like a couple 3-star reads, and those were like my worst rated. So it wasn't too bad of a month. So let's go ahead and go over my stats and then obviously my top reads for April. Okay, so we are going to start off with my monthly stats, and then we'll go into my top reads. I actually had a really good month. I didn't read as much as my goal was in my head, at least. I had kind of a tough week on the last week with kind of like a reading slump with a couple of these hockey romances I was reading, and it took me a little too long to get through it, but I did read 32 books for April, so that is still really great for me. And I had some amazing couple 6-star reads and quite a bit of 5-star reads. So for 32 books, my ratings were 2 6 stars, 10 5 stars, which is amazing, 2 4.5 stars, 12 4 stars. Those are usually my most, is like my 4-star. And then I had 2 3.5 stars and then 4 3 stars. So a really good month, especially with those 6-star reads. I did read about 10,641 pages was the total pages. These are some of like the little things. I don't even know if you guys care about this, but basically I read 7 arcs. I had 4 novellas, 13 audiobooks, which was great. I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks. That's one thing that's really great about my job is I work in a cubicle and I can just kind of have an earbud in and listen to my audiobooks while I'm doing my work. So I love it. So some of the genres that I read 7 mafia romance, 4 historical romance, which is good for me. I'm trying to read more historical, as you know. I had 2 paranormal. I don't read enough paranormal. I do need to get back into that. 5 dark romances. I guess you could kind of count the mafia as dark romance, but I just classify that by itself as like mafia romance. I read 5 sports romances, a lot of hockey. And then I read 2 alien romances and then 7 contemporary. So, you know, I primarily do read a lot of dark and mafia romance, so it's not a surprise to see that's a lot of what I read. So let's go ahead and talk about my top books. So I want to start off going over my 2 6-star reads. So the first one was actually the buddy read that we did. It was on Bookmark by Jen's channel. So if you want to see the live show, I will try to remember to link that down below. But if I forget, just head over to Bookmark by Jen's channel, check it out, make sure you subscribe and see her channel, see the live show that we did. It was pretty funny because they don't read a lot of historical romance and they were not feeling as loving and excited about this romance as I was, because I gave it 6 stars. And obviously I should tell you the book I'm talking about. So the book that I'm talking about is The Wolf and the Wildflower by Stacy Reid. I actually just got this in the mail finally. I bought it for like that Target sale, and it took a while to get to me. So I don't know if my ring light's hitting it, so I do apologize for that if it is. But this was such an amazing, unique historical romance. I absolutely just adored it. This is between James, he's the Duke of Wolverton, and then we also have Jules Southby. And what is crazy about this is Jules is our heroine, has been living as a man her whole life. Her mother basically had very hard she lost a couple babies, and she was in danger of she could die if she keeps trying to have children. And her husband really needed an heir. We know how it was back then. And so he was constantly pressuring her about having an heir. And so when she sees that she had a daughter, she has them say it's a boy, because the doctor kind of said you can't really be getting pregnant again. It's too dangerous. And she knew she just felt the pressure that her husband would want her to. So it was supposed to be a short-term thing to kind of give her that break, but she just kept going with it. I mean, I hate the mother in this book. I think she's such a gaslighting little bitch. But anyways, so Jules has lived as a man, but what's interesting about that is she's gone to university. She's been able to have complete freedoms that women would not be able to have. As a woman, she would just basically, her worth would be for marriage. And she wouldn't have a say in anything she does. And that's just the sad state of what it was back then. So she actually has gone to school, and she has just finished. Her father is an alienist, and which back then is basically like a psychiatrist, and he studies the mind. And so she was getting involved in that at school as well. And so she wants to work with her father, and they get an interesting case. And it is for the Duke of Wolverton. We have James, and he was lost out. I'm trying to remember if it was the Yukon. Yeah, he was in the wilderness of the Yukon, I think for 10 years or something, if I'm remembering correctly. But basically he's been located, he's found. But they need to make sure he's of sound mind, because he's going to be the Duke. He has to meet, the Queen and everything. And so it's a tough situation. He is not the same. He's very shut off. He had to shut off his feelings, out in the wild. He had to shut them down just to survive. He has heightened senses because he lived in a cave in the dark for a while too. He actually bonded with wolves. So it's a very interesting thing. So he's not comfortable in this new life, and he doesn't really feel connected to his family, and his mother's just very worried. And so she hires them to come out. And so Jules and her father come out to meet him and kind of work with them. They're going to be staying there because I believe he has 3 weeks till he has to kind of, I think, either meet the Queen or show that he's of sound mind. But basically when he meets Jules, he can scent her with his heightened senses, and he knows she's a woman. And he doesn't call her out in front of everybody, but he lets her know. And so he kind of decides to work with her, and they'll keep each other's secrets. And so they kind of start to get to know each other through all these conversations and bonding. He would like to go in the backyard, and he had a tree house built out there so that he could get away. He would take off his shirt and stuff and go run out into the, forest and the woods and everything. And so she spent time with him. And so they're very attracted to each other, and they're drawn to each other. And so they kind of go into this sexual relationship. But the thing is she is living as a man. She is not of nobility. So and he, has to find a wife. And so it's that question of, do I want to give up my complete freedom as living as a man to basically be a wife and lose everything that I've worked for? And so they have to kind of come to terms with that, or make sacrifices for each other. I just loved this so much because it was so unique. There are some parts that are very unbelievable of her living as a man and nobody knowing. I get that, but let's just suspend our belief because, I mean, we read some really crazy dark romances with crazy setups and we're okay with that. So I didn't care. I thought that they had amazing sexual connection. They were so hot together. I love the night that they like go out like to a gentleman club and then end up like at a brothel and they hook up there. I thought it was so hot. And I just loved how he was opening himself up for her throughout this story. And the letter he writes her near the end and the things that he was willing to do to be with her was so beautiful. And especially when you think of that time, it's crazy. I can't really say because I don't want to give a lot away, but I'm telling you, at first I didn't think I was going to like James because he was very standoffish and very cut off from his emotions, but he definitely grew on me in this book and I absolutely loved their romance. So I loved this book. It was a 6-star read. I think I gave it like 3 chilies because there's some definite good sex scenes in here. So I absolutely adored it. I love Stacy Reid. She is one of my favorite historical romance authors, and I'm trying to read her backlist. So absolutely love this and can't wait to read more from her. Okay, so the other 6-star read I had was also historical romance. So I just love that my 2 6-star reads were historical romance. I think a lot of people are not reading historical right now, and I really love it. It's what I started out reading as a kid, so I just want to see people come back to historical again, and I just adore historical romance. So the next one I technically have is a reread, but I never rated it because I read this a long time ago, and it was before I was like rating, because right now, if you follow me on Goodreads, make sure to follow me or friend me or whatever you want to do because I will rate and review every book that I read now. It's like my goal. So, and I've been doing that for over a year, I think, a year or two. And so I'm trying to stick with that. So this was actually a reread, but it went up in my estimation because I ended up giving this a 6-star. This is The Earl Takes All by Lorraine Heath. I am actually doing a vlog for this, which I will have that up soon, hopefully. I did a vlog where I read this, Hellions of Havisham. I had read this one a long time ago, which is book 2, and I had never read the first or third book, so I decided to reread this one at least, but read the other 2 and do a vlog. So hopefully that'll be up in a week or 2. Depending on what I'm posting. But this one is another unique setup because in this we have Edward. And he is actually kind of been in love with his brother's wife because his twin brother is married to Julia. And many years ago when Edward's brother was just kind of wooing her, courting her, Edward had seen her out and... Oh, there goes my book. Okay, sorry about that. My book fell. So let's continue. Okay, so what I was saying was that Edward had seen Julia out in like this rose garden at a ball, at a party. And he basically went out there to her and she thinks he's his twin brother. And he kind of like steals their first kiss. Like he didn't even know she hadn't kissed yet or anything. And he was kind of like deep down hoping she wanted to kiss him and not thinking it was his brother. But they share a passionate kiss. And then she, says his brother's name and he has to like break the news to her. And so ever since then, they kind of had this contentious kind of strained relationship. Most of that is because Edward has been in love and pining after her, but he loves his twin brother so much. So he just felt like he kind of had to push her away or be rude so that he would have those boundaries. But Julia and his brother have been married for a while. She is currently pregnant. And him and his twin brother, actually, they go on adventures and stuff. And this was kind of like one more adventure they would go on. They were in Africa together on a trip. and his twin brother dies. And he gets attacked by a mama gorilla, basically. But his twin brother basically had made him promise to kind of take his place because Julia is pregnant. She's later in her pregnancy, but she has had multiple miscarriages and they don't want her to lose the baby. So Edward's put in a really bad situation where, and it's like a crazy thing for him to be in, where he has to go home and pretend to be his brother. Now, his brother's a very straight-laced. He is like the Earl, even though he was only born I think 10 minutes earlier or something as a twin. But he, was more straight-laced and serious. Edward was kind of would come off as a womanizer, but he really wasn't. He was just that happy, live your life to the fullest kind of guy. And so he has to really kind of try and be his brother, and that's really hard for him. What's really hard for him is he loves Julia, and now he's pretending to be her husband. And he finds out they actually slept in the same bed and they kiss and they're very intimate together. And so Julia starts to get hurt that he's not kissing her. And so he kind of has to do that. And it's hard for him because he loves her. And so he's kind of stuck in this bad position of wanting to be with her, but she thinks he's his brother. So he has to wait till after she has the baby to break the news to her that her husband had actually died. And then, he's hoping that she will have a son, so she'll have an heir. And then, that heir will be the future Earl, and he won't have to, worry about that. But he's not about not taking his responsibilities. He does care about everything. And while he's being his brother, he's really taking things in hand. And, but after she has the baby, it is a girl. And, now he is the Earl and he is the heir. And he doesn't want to tell her. He keeps putting it off because he knows she's going to feel so betrayed and be upset. So it's this he's really in a bad situation because she's eventually going to be healed enough where she wants to have sex, and they're going to get to that point. So it is really angsty. This is such an angsty, beautiful, romantic. I highlighted so much of the book. I listened to this on audiobook. I highlighted it in my ebook, and then I also have a physical copy. So I'm thinking I'm going to annotate this because I think it's one of my favorite historical romances. It's just so beautiful. Edward is one of my top book boyfriends now. He is so swoon-worthy. The things that he says to Julia, this man is obsessed with his woman, and he's such a good guy, but everybody viewed him as just a player and a rake, and he's not like that. He's just so wonderful. I love him so much. But this romance, near the end, I was getting teared up listening to the audiobook because it's just what do you do? Because even if, say, she is going to forgive him when she finds out and they want to be together, he has to come out as being alive as the Earl, and it's illegal for you to marry your brother's wife. So they wouldn't really be able to be together. So it's just this kind of tough situation of okay, do I live as my brother forever? Or do I, they come out and then they'd have to move on from each other. So it's so angsty. It's so beautiful. It's so romantic. I love it so much. There's a lot of good sexy scenes. There's dirty talk in here and from the heroine. And that was something that I really loved seeing in historical romance where her husband had been deaf in one of his ears. And so she would always say these dirty things in his ear, and he wouldn't be able to hear her, but she's doing it to Edward and he can definitely hear her, and it's hot. So anyways, this is a 6-star read. Honestly, if you haven't read this series or read this book, you could go in and just read this. You don't have to read the first one at all. It's amazing. So I would highly recommend this book. I absolutely love it. Okay, so the third one I want to mention could be a 6-star, but I've been waiting for the full trilogy to come out till I give my 6-star rating, but it's probably going to be a 6-star trilogy. And if you know, it's Cage of Ice and Echoes by Pam Godwin. This is the second book in this trilogy. I can't say a lot, because it's like you need to go in blind. Plus, this is the second book. This is a why choose. It started out in the first book as a captive. Frankie was taken captive by Denver, and he flies her out to the middle of nowhere in Arctic Alaska to live with him and his 3 sons. And a lot goes down in that book. It is dark. It is shocking twists. There's so much going on in this series, but I can't stop thinking about it. I think Pam Godwin has knocked it out of the park with this series, this trilogy so far. This book, the second book, picks up after the cliffhanger in the first book, and they are in a really bad situation survival-wise because they don't really have food, their power isn't working, and they are in Arctic Alaska, and winter is here. I guess that's Game of Thrones, but winter is here. And they're in a bad situation. So a lot of this too is like very survivalist, like how do you survive in such rough conditions? And then obviously it's the growing relationship between Frankie and Kodiak and Leonid. We also have a third POV because she was married when she was captured, and her husband Monty is looking for her. So I can't really say anything else because you have to go in blind. But I do got to tell you, this book was phenomenal. I couldn't put it down. I loved it so much. I want to talk about it to everybody. It gives you so many reveals. So it answers a ton of questions that you had from the first book. But it still leaves you with a couple questions near the end for the final book, obviously. The final book is coming out in August, so I can't, I need it now. But I was lucky enough to get an arc for both these books, and I'm just so appreciative of Pam Godwin for doing that. So I just can't remember. I'm sorry I can't say much more. If you want a spoiler review, I do have a vlog for the first book, which is A Hills of Shivers and Shadows. And I will try to link that down below or put it up in the cards if I remember. I also did a vlog for the second book, but I was waiting for it to be out for, a few weeks before I post that vlog because it has spoilers in it. So if you are interested and you don't care about being spoiled and you want to see my thoughts, check that out because I talk a lot. So anyways, this was a 5-star read. I think I gave it 3.5 chilies, and it's so good, you guys. It's so good. Okay, so the other book that I read was actually for my 12 Recs from 12 Friends, and I was surprised that I loved this book. That's what's great about that kind of challenge, is it's like people that are on Instagram that they don't always read the same stuff I read, and so it kind of pushes me out of my comfort zone, which I appreciate. So I read The Things We Leave Unfinished by Rebecca Yarros. I had previously only read her Fourth Wing book, which I didn't really like. I thought it was very YA, very immature, not a good fantasy. Like compared to other fantasy romances, it just wasn't working for me. But this book, which is more, I think, of what she usually wrote, was so good. The first half really was slow for me. I listened to an audiobook. I don't know if it's still available, but it was on Audible Plus. So it's available if you have a membership. And I recommend it because I was getting so emotional. The second half, like the final 30% of this book had me bawling. Like I was crying. This story is told in 2 timelines. We have the current timeline, and that is with Noah and Georgia. And Georgia's great-grandmother was like this best-selling romantic romance author, and she has passed, and she has this unfinished novel that is based on her own life. And basically they're kind of like having this famous author, Noah, come finish it. And Georgia really isn't happy about that. And they kind of butt heads through the current timeline because he wants to give it a HEA and she wants it to be told as it really was. Because her great-grandmother's story is from World War II, and so we go back to that timeline. And that is between Jameson and Scarlett, which is her great-grandmother. And her Scarlett and Jameson were, she was British, he was an American pilot, and they fell in love during World War II. He was over there actually fighting before the U.S. where it was involved. And he was a pilot, and she helped out in the British kind of intelligence. And they basically fell in love. They have a really beautiful romance, but it's so emotional because you know something's going to go wrong here. And it's falling in love in the time of war and how crazy that must have been, where your life is constantly in danger. He's obviously always going out as a pilot. And then when they have a kid, they end up getting married. They have a baby. And she's still doing stuff there, and she's living there, and there's like bombings going on over there at that time. And so it's just a very dangerous place for them. And but it's just such a beautiful romance. I will tell you, I was way more invested in the past and the great grandmother's love story. But there is a twist that I did not see coming near the end. It is so freaking emotional. I was cleaning the house, crying my eyes out. And so it got me. Like, I thought the first half, I was like, oh, it's like a 4-star. That next half was a 5-star read. I think if it wasn't as slow and like if I cared about both romances, it could have been a 6-star read. But this was phenomenal. I loved it. It really made me appreciate Rebecca Yarros more, and that I want to actually give more of her other books a try, not her fantasy romance maybe. So I definitely love this. I think it's like only 2 chilies, but you didn't need the spice. It was more of an emotional, like heartbreaking, beautiful story. Okay, so the last one that I want to bring up, I don't know why it took me so long to continue with this series, but this is King of Pride by Anna Huang. I loved this book so much. The first book I gave like 4 stars, but for some reason I loved this. This is another billionaire romance, and this is between Kai and Isabella. And Kai is going up, he's gonna basically try to become the CEO. It's up for a new vote. His mother is stepping down, and it's a huge company, and so they still have to do a vote and stuff. So he has to be like kind of like on his best behavior, but he is a very straight-laced, very, ambitious, hard worker. He doesn't have a crazy lifestyle or anything, but he is really drawn to Isabella. She is a bartender, more of a free spirit. She works at this club that they attend, but there's this thing where there's no fraternization with like the members, so she's not allowed to get romantically involved with anyone. And Kai is just constantly drawn to her, even though it's kind of like an opposites attract. She is trying to be an author, but she is having a lot of issues. She has a lot of like self-esteem issues because she comes from a very driven family that they're all very successful. She has like basically this ticking clock that she needs to have a book by a certain time, or her family's like, you're coming back home to work in our business. We gave you that freedom. Now you need to come back home. So she just doesn't have a lot of faith in herself. So I just love these characters. Kai is just so sweet. He's so supportive of her. He does so many things to try and help her through her like writing blocks and stress. And, they start to have kind of like, basically they had to have a secret relationship because they're not allowed to be together. Plus he's in the public eye very much right now. And with like that CEO vote, it means everything to him. So I just really loved this. It was nice to read like just a sweet, low angst billionaire romance with like a very sweet cinnamon roll hero. I love Kai. He's also gets after it with the dirty talk, and it's spicy. Anna Huang I think she's doing so much more with this series. And I've only read the first 2 books than the previous Twisted one, which I still loved. I just think these are a little bit more mature and adult and emotional. So I absolutely loved this because I felt like they were really perfect for each other. They balanced each other out, and it was just a sweet, good time. So I had given this 5 stars, and then I think, it was 3.5 chilies. So I would definitely recommend this one. Okay, so those were my top 5 reads for April. I did have 4 3-stars, but I'm only going to bring up a couple that were like my main issues. One of them, which I was really bummed about, was Legacy. It was the final book. It's kind of like a set of epilogues of each couple for the off-campus series. I loved the off-campus series, but this book just, each one wasn't that great. They kind of pissed me off with the epilogue they did for Garrett and Hannah, because it was like a hidden like pregnancy and she was not telling him about it, and they'd always had such amazing communication throughout the series and were such a good relationship that I did not like that. I thought a lot of these were like not like these happy little epilogues. There was like drama in them, and so I just didn't really fully connect to them. I think I gave a couple of the stories 4 stars, and then the other 2 like 2.5. So it was just kind of a letdown. I honestly don't think we needed this because I didn't want to see Garrett and Hannah have that. That's like where we're leaving them. I mean, obviously they make up and everything's good and they have the baby and blah, blah, blah. But I didn't want that story for them, if that makes sense. So I had given this one 3 stars. The other one that I had, was To Hate Adam Connor by Ella Mays. I really didn't like either of these 2 books, so I don't know if this author isn't for me or just this series, but the heroine drove me nuts in this book because she was so like image obsessed, and she would like constantly objectify Adam, and I didn't like that. She would like talk about his junk and the size of his package and blah, blah, and it was just like constant. So I didn't like her. And then she was like, oh, I love love in the beginning. And then she's like, oh no, I'm cursed. We can't have love. And so she hated him the whole thing and kept pushing him away. Even though she totally was into him, she would keep saying, I hate you, or I dislike you. And she just drove me freaking nuts. Both the men in this were great. Especially this one. Adam Connor was amazing. But the heroine drove me nuts. So if that happens, it's not a great time. So anyways, those were my top reads, a couple of my not so great ones. Anyways, let me know your favorite book from April. Leave me a comment down below. As always, please make sure to subscribe to my channel, like, comment. I appreciate all your guys' support. And let me know if you like this end of the month kind of wrap up, if this is okay. But thank you so much. I am excited for May because we have that Mafia readathon coming up, and I have a lot of good arcs coming up that I'm excited for. All right, I thank you so much, you guys, and I will see you on the next one.